7:30 on Thursday here in Hong Kong. Here are your news headlines as they're developing this morning on Bloomberg Live. The United States standing pat on interest rates, 5.25. Baby inspiring New Zealand to hold theirs at a record. The USD and the Kiwi, the NZ dollar, both down as we speak. Advantest, this is a chip testing equipment maker in Japan, may have missed its first half operating profit targets. The Nikkei English Daily says the company's sales didn't rise as much as they hoped. And Malaysian developer Sunway may set up a REIT, or real estate investment trust, late next year. The New Straits Times says it would have a value of at least 600 million US dollars. Okay, take a look at this. Oh boy, there's the shot across the bow to West Kowloon. Air pollution index, just checked it a few minutes ago, 73 in Central this morning, 60-something in Tsim Sha Tsui. This is actually considered a clear day these days. It has a lot to do, of course, with the fact that we're burning a lot of fossil fuels, and there are a lot of factories across the border in China belching out lots of smoke. This might sound a little bit esoteric, but let me tell you about this news. China acknowledging this morning a floor for emissions reduction credits created in the mainland, sold overseas. The credits derived from projects that use renewable energy and then take other steps to keep greenhouse gases from being emitted, basically carbon credits, a way of putting a lid on emissions. An official in the Environment Ministry says setting the price too high could halt projects in China and send them elsewhere. Margaret Thorning is with us this morning. She's the MD for the International Council for Capital Formation, a European think tank focused on tax policy and environmental policy as well. Margaret, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, that sounded really esoteric, what I was just saying there, but the fact that China is actually talking about carbon credits or emission credits and the kind of pricing mechanism that's in place, at least it's a start, isn't it, for mainland policy. They do recognize it's an issue that will have to be dealt with during this lifetime.
Well, I think China does recognize environmental issues are important, and while emission trading may be of some benefit to China with respect to, say, the European Union, another very promising development is the signing of the Asia-Pacific Partnership, which was signed last year. It's a partnership between China, the U.S., Japan, Korea, Australia, and India to work on clean development, clean energy, economic development. The idea is to partner to promote the investment that will be needed, especially in China and India, to have more energy, cleaner energy, which emits less of everything, including particulate emissions as well as CO2.
What does this agreement, does this pact really have teeth? Because some of the participants in this partnership are not even signatory to, of course, the Kyoto Protocol.
Well, I think the concept here is that positive incentives through the promise and the hope of further investment, further high-tech, clean investment, especially from developed countries, will enable China and India to meet their needs for strong energy growth in a much cleaner, less emitting technology. There isn't a concept here of punishment. The concept is if certain regulatory institutional reforms are encouraged, for example, stronger protection for intellectual property rights, the foreign direct investment both in cleaner energy, more efficient boilers, better coal, better fossil fuel technology, as well as for manufacturing, will flow. So the hope is that with some movement toward more protection for property rights, less corruption, more smaller role for government, the kind of things that characterize some of the developed countries, will encourage a continued strong flow of investment. And that's likely to be of more benefit in the long run than trying to trade emissions with Europe. Europe will never have enough money to pay China for reducing emissions. It's going to have to be done on a market-based, business-to-business sort of basis.
How do you get everybody on board? This is a question I'd like to ask, because I've been through China before. Obviously, if you go to Beijing and Shanghai, it's more in the public interest. I mean, Beijing is going to be where the world's eyes are going to be set on in a few years for the Olympics. But you go inland to the more desolate places, and they're just trying to raise economic growth and get people off their agrarian background. And these are the places where they're toxifying lakes with weird pink foam. And there's a different set of standards and a different set of priorities no matter where you go.
That's correct. And economic growth is certainly China's priority and has to be in order to reduce the poverty, especially outside the large city areas. But with the development of more market-based institutions, investment will flow from the developed countries, which can help assist in the economic growth outside Beijing and outside the key city areas. So we're going to have to see some sort of movement toward more, sanctity of contracts, property rights, that sort of thing that makes Western companies comfortable to put their very best, highest quality investment outside developed countries.
To simplify, this might sound like an oversimplification, but is the goal to wean these nations off fossil fuels and get them to revisit things that, 20, 30 years ago when I was in grade school, we heard Mrs. Gray in third grade talk about capturing the energy of the wave, how much steam there was in the core of the earth. Solar panels were a big thing back then, but over the decades, proven to be, with the kind of technology we have in existence right now, not viable economically. Is that the idea?
The goal of the Asia-Pacific Partnership is to develop fossil fuels in a cleaner way, a less emitting way. There is a task force with China and Australia. They're the co-chairs of the Clean Fossil Fuel. Mm-hmm. Fossil fuels are going to be a major share of the world's energy mix for the next probably 50, 60 years at least. And China, having so much coal, is certainly going to be using it. So the question is how to burn it more cleanly, how to move toward combined cycle gasification, how to capture carbon that's emitted from power plants and from factories and store it. And the Asia-Pacific Partnership has the task forces specifically designed to develop commercial projects by 2015. That's the goal, to capture and store carbon, to have combined cycle coal gasification. So the idea is to develop in a cleaner way our current fossil fuels, and also to develop renewables. Renewables is another one of the partnership. But most forecasts, including the International Energy Agency, show that fossil fuels will remain dominant, and renewables probably will not capture more than 5 or 6% of the energy mix over the next 30, 40 years.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah, I've seen the ads from, I think it was either BP or Shell, saying it took like hundreds of years to burn through half our oil supplies. It'll only take 30 to 40 years to burn through the other half. Something to think about, especially when we look outside here in Hong Kong. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Dr. Margot Thording, ICCF, with us in Hong Kong. We'll be right back at 41 past the hour.